This download is the only extract the BBC has of this edition of Desert Island Discs. The presenter was Roy Plumley.
Reggie, what part of the country do you come from?
I was born right in the Midlands at a little town called Daventry.
And I presume you come from a musical family, because I know you started very early.
Yes, I do. My mother was partly Welsh and a great natural musician, and my father was a farmer's boy who always wanted to be an organist. And in those days it was very difficult to get education and to get a chance to play the organ and so on. So he had a good try, but he didn't succeed in making a go of it. And so naturally, when his son came along, he was destined to be an organist even before he was born.
Yes. When did you start playing the organ?
When I was about 11, and then when I was 12, I was lucky enough to be put under one of the greatest organ teachers of the time, Dr. Basil Johnson, who was musical director of Rugby School, because by that time we'd moved to Rugby, and I had 4 marvellous years with him, and then I went on to the Royal College of Music and had 4 years under Sir Walter Parrott.
Yes. At that time you had a post as organist in London?
Oh yes, I was lucky enough to drop into St. Mary's, Bryanston Square, while I was still a student.
You talked about your First World War service with the Royal Navy. You saw a lot of action in those days.
Well, there wasn't much action, of course, at all with the Grand Fleet, except the greatest of all, which was the Battle of Jutland. And I was lucky enough, I suppose I was lucky enough, to have a grand circle view by being up in the foretop right through the action. The foretop is that kind of cage on the top of the tripod mast. And I could see the whole Grand Fleet spread out from one horizon to the other. We were 3 ships astern of the Iron Duke.
Yes. And when the war was over?
Well, when the war was over, I finished by being naval boarding officer out in West Africa, handling all the convoys which used to accumulate in Sierra Leone, where there's a marvellous harbour. And I got rather stuck out there for quite a long time before I could get away. But I got back to England and was discharged around about July 1919.
Yes. Did you go back to your church?
Oh yes, the church was marvellous. They not only kept the job open for me all the time I was away, but they paid me in full. And then when I came back, I went straight back to the church, and I also went back to working hard. I was most anxious to become a solo pianist in those days.
I believe you started broadcasting in the days even before Savoy Hill.
Yes, I did. Broadcasting started around October 1923. A bit before that, I know that I was invited to give a piano recital from the old Marconi Studios in the Strand in October 1923, and believe it or not, the man who was in charge of the microphone actually held it by a handle in his hand all the time you were playing.
Do you remember what your fee was?
I think I did it for love. I don't think there was any fee attached to it.
Well, then what happened?
Well, then after that, I tried very hard to be a solo pianist, but it wasn't easy to get a start in those days. You have to have so much more than just a lot of talent and many hours and hours of work. And that was when they started to put these, what I've always thought of as comic organs, in movie theatres. And I dropped right into that and took to it like a duck taking to water, and I've never looked back.
Yes. Where did you start?
I started in the theatre in Edinburgh, quite close to the Scott Memorial, right on Princes Street. And I lived and worked on the organ day and night for the first 7 or 8 weeks, and then I was brought down to the New Gallery Kinema in Regent Street.
When did you first broadcast on that New Gallery organ?
The broadcast then was in June 1926.
Now, that first organ broadcast from the New Gallery Cinema, the first of thousands, you began recording there too, didn't you?
Yes, right in the same month. And through broadcasting, I found that the people all over this near part of the continent used to listen to the BBC much more than to their own stations. And I found I was just as well known in Italy and France, Paris. I played there for quite a bit, and Holland. I've been 29 times, had a marvellous time, and Denmark and Germany and all over Sweden even.
Yes. In the mid-30s, I think it was, you became the BBC's resident staff organist.
Oh, that was a wonderful piece of luck for me, that I was chosen to be the staff organist of this absolutely famous organ. It was a beautiful organ, the best ever made by that particular company, and it caught right on right away. People loved it.
You were voted, I believe it was in a Daily Express poll, as the most popular broadcaster of any kind, including comedians and dance band leaders and the whole lot.
It's quite true, I was. The whole thing was handled by Jonah Barrington, and I went down to see him at the Daily Express, and he chatted away and said, "By the way, how do you get on with Sir John Reith?" And I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I've never met him." And when the Daily Express came out the next morning, and I've still got the copy, "Famous ace organist has never met his boss."
Well, when you left the BBC in 1938, I know you had planned a very sensational tour as a follow-on.
Yes, I had. We decided to go out on tour with a big travelling pipe organ, and we let ourselves really go on it and really design one that was much unnecessarily too big. But you did have to have a big organ if you're going round, because you'd be very much in competition with the various big theatre organs in the provincial cities you went to. So we had to have a big one. And so we finally finished up with a 5-manual, 30-ton organ. I can't tell you how many pipes it had, over 2,000.
Yes.
And we used to have to go around in 5 30-foot lorries. And I had a marvellous staff of 15 altogether.
Yes, I remember the finale of that act when the front casing of the swell chamber was flown up, and we saw that amazing sight of 2,000 glistening pipes. Well, then the war came, and it was rather difficult to transport that organ around the country.
Well, when the war started, we gave up the idea altogether for a few weeks, and then when we found the bombs didn't come, we left about 1/3 of the organ behind and went out on tour again. But unfortunately, I went on too long, and we travelled right into the middle of right through the Blitz. I've actually played it in Liverpool Empire Theatre with 3 incendiaries burning in the roof and bombs dropping all around for 10 hours. And it was really most unpleasant, to be frank.
Well, the BBC took over the organ.
When the BBC's own organ, the old one that I'd been organist of, was destroyed in one of the very early air raids, as soon as I heard about that, I said to myself, here's my opportunity to get my organ out of danger and off the road, because while we were travelling in wartime, nobody would insure it. And so I offered it to the BBC, and they jumped at the idea of getting a really beautiful, great big pipe organ that you could put anywhere, and they said, yes, please, send it up to North Wales.
Yes.
So we sent it up to North Wales, and they put it in the theatre up there.
And that became the BBC theatre organ.
They had it right through to the end of the war, and it did an average of 12 broadcasts a week for the rest of the war. And then, at the end of the war, the BBC couldn't get another pipe organ built by anybody for delivery under 4 years, and I had to get my organ off the road because it was, by that time, a white elephant. Vaudeville had practically died out. And so we came to an agreement, and they bought it for a fair price, and it became the official BBC organ, installed in Jubilee Chapel on the south side, and it was, they had it for 25 years.
Mm-hmm. Reggie, 20 years ago you decided to emigrate to the United States. Why was that?
It was due to quite a number of causes. First of all, to be quite frank, I wouldn't be happy earning my living as a teacher. I loved teaching an odd, really talented pupil, but you can't live on that. And if I had to teach from 9 in the morning till 6 at night, I'd be miserable. All the theatre organs by that time were out of action, so that I couldn't get a job as a theatre organist. And then I got this offer to go off to America, and I'd been there quite a number of times previously as a visitor, and rather loved the country. I got an offer to go there with a definite job to go to as vice president of a pipe organ company, and so we pulled up our hooks and moved out there, the whole family.
Yes, where were you?
Well, we started in Virginia, and I was there for not a very long time, and later on we moved on up to Chicago, where I had a marvelous job as a head demonstrator of organs for the whole of the Midwest. And we lived in Chicago for 15 years, and we found it a delightful place. It's a lovely city. Unfortunately, it gets down to below zero in January and February, but the rest of the year is pretty sunny and mostly nice weather. It's known as the Windy City, but that's not so bad, really.
Where are you based now?
Well, the whole thing in a nutshell is that after I'd been in Chicago 15 years, the company suddenly put on an age limit, so we had to retire. And we'd been down to Florida several times on vacation, so we said, let's go and live in Florida, so
Yes.
we now live in Florida.
And you're very busy down there. You're playing in a church?
Yes, I'm the lucky man who did what all the organists dream to do. I managed to find two churches, or rather a church, a Presbyterian church to play in on Sunday mornings, and a nice big liberal Jewish temple to play in on Friday nights, Friday evenings, and Saturday mornings.
Splendid. Both your children are over there, of course. They must be grown up now.
Oh, yes, they are. My son still lives in the Chicago area, and my daughter, why she couldn't marry a Chicago man, I don't know, but she married a Boston man, so she's just outside Boston, and they're very happily settled down. She has 3 wonderful children.
Yes. And now you've been over here in Britain on a tour, and a lot of people have been glad to see you back.
Oh, but I've been awfully glad to see all my old friends.